Well, welcome everybody. I'm excited to introduce Lauren V. Davis to the program today. She is a branding expert that focuses on helping speakers get their personal brand established in the marketplace. Lauren, welcome to the program. Excited to have you part of this. Kick us off telling us a little bit about the things that you speak about and the coaching and consulting that you do.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is so wonderful, and I'm excited to be here. Like you said, I'm Lauren V. Davis, and I am a personal branding consultant, and I help speakers, thought leaders, business owners build their communities on stage and off through the power of personal branding.
So, that's interesting. You said building communities on stage and off through personal branding. If you would be so kind, could you define for us two things? One is, what is personal branding so that we're
Yeah.
kind of level set here because that term gets tossed around. And then let's talk about this concept of community and some of the need to knows and some of the things that you've learned about building community.
Yeah. So building community, what I learned is, well, first of all, we'll back it up a little bit. When I was 19, I started a vinyl record store, like, the big black vinyl records. I started a record store back then and built it for 15 years. And what was happening is during that building of the record store, which, when you're 19, you don't really know how to run a business or what you're really doing. When you're building something like that, you quickly realize that unless you are creating engagement and relationships with your community as a local business, you're not going to be able to keep your doors open. You need to be able to serve your community, build relationships, and really build a micro community around your business, one that wants to talk about you, one that wants to say your name in places that you're not in, one that wants to you know tell everyone about the uniqueness of your business. And so what was happening is throughout the years, I was getting, through in the early years, I was getting a lot of people coming up to me and saying, hey, what is it that you're doing, and how are you getting these people into this very niche business? This was 2006 to 2009, so we were in a big recession. And they were saying, like, how are you getting these people in, to this very niche business that nobody really needs to spend money on right now? And I dug really deep into that. I went back, I decided, like, this is really what's fueling me here, is like figuring out this puzzle, figuring out what it takes to build these relationships and build engagement. And so I dove into marketing and business and went back to school for it, even it was for design and the entire branding scope of what makes that work. But what I found out is that the reason why our business was successful, and then the principles that I was able to carry into other businesses, and then eventually to speakers and consultants and coaches and thought leaders, is the concept of the personal brand and telling your story through your personal brand, online, offline, on stage, off stage. And that is what truly builds a community around who you are and about what you stand for and what your mission is, what your values are. And so you asked me for the definition of a personal brand or personal branding. They're both different. A personal brand is a broadly recognized and uniform perception of an individual based on their experience, their expertise, their competencies, their actions, their achievements, right? Their within a community or within their industry or their marketplace. But personal branding is a little different. It is the conscious and intentional effort to position yourself as an authority inside your industry. So it's a process that elevates your credibility, it differentiates you from your competition, it advances your career, it increases your circle of influence, which is a big one, especially for speakers, and it helps you have a much larger impact for the audience that you want to serve. So the intentional idea of personal branding is taking all of the things that make you uniquely you and kind of building a community around it, building like a little microcosm around it that will help serve you. It will help you build a better and more sustainable and consistent business around your speaking career. It'll help you book more gigs and create those relationships with conference organizers, and it'll help you just build a better and stronger business.
So that's a really interesting journey with the record store to coming to that realization. Is it because when you were building the store, so much of the community was connected to you personally, or how did that loyalty and that buzz
Yeah.
translate into this concept of the personal brand?
Well, we told our stories. We told the stories of what it was like building a business, building ourselves as people into our business. So we would tell the behind the scenes of what was happening in our lives and how, like, what it was like building this business. We would tell stories about why we cared about the products that we were carrying in the gift side of our store. Like we would carry um, purposeful companies, independent companies, and we wanted people to know the stories behind that. What it really boils down to is how you're telling your story and how people are connecting with that story. The goal isn't to connect with every single person. The goal is to connect with the right audience and the right people who are going to be super connected to your story. And the same goes for people who are speaking on stages. When you're on stage, the first thing that you should think about is what story you're going to tell, especially not only just for the sake of connecting with the audience, but for yourself, for your own confidence. Because let me tell you what happens when you tell a story. When you tell a story about your personal brand and how people connect with you. When you are on stage and you get up there and you tell a story to your audience for the first time, what happens is you're going to start seeing these little connection points as you're looking out there into people's eyes. You're going to start seeing who's nodding, who's really connecting with your story, who's laughing, who's giggling, who's taking a note immediately, who's like, oh, I got the chills. You're going to start noticing that stuff right away. And once you notice that you're connecting with the audience, you become more confident to do the rest of your talk. Once you feel the audience's energy, you feel that you have now fused together and you have that connection point, you will absolutely have the connection and the power and the confidence to do the rest of your talk, no matter how you feel about it. And so that's what I always tell people is, how are you making yourself memorable when you're on stage? How are you making yourself memorable when you have a small business? And all of us who are speakers, who have speaking businesses and businesses they've created around their speaking career, we are all small business owners. Also, those are businesses that you're running. And when you have those connection points, what's going to happen is someone will say, "Huh, I wonder if I should follow them on social media. Let me go check that. Let me go check their social media out while they're talking. Ooh, yeah, I really like what they have to say here, so I'm going to follow them." Or, hey, let me go see if they have an email list. Or at the end of the day, if at the end of the presentation, when you give them a call to action, you ask them to, look at your QR code or to email you or message you. The chances of them doing that, if they feel connected to you and your story and who you are as a person, is going to be so much higher.
So that's really interesting, because what I was thinking about when you were sharing that was that unless we build a momentary community experience during the talk, during the speech,
Yes.
we are going to struggle to build an ongoing community over time. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yes. And isn't that such a metaphor for life too? And how we make friends, how we establish connections with other people. Like, even if you think about in the process of networking at a networking event, you go and there's somebody who shoves their business card in your face and gives you a pitch and walks away. You don't really feel connected with them or like you want to continue a relationship with them. But if you are at a networking event and you have a really great talk with someone, you exchange numbers or you exchange LinkedIn profiles, and you get home and you see that they've messaged you and they're like, hey, I just really loved when we talked about this tonight. It was so much fun. And I just really felt a great connection with you. And then after that, you decide like, hey, I think let's try to get coffee or something. You go get coffee, you really understand what each other does in business, and then you decide to work with each other. Or you decide, I'm going to refer this person on to somebody else. That is how it works in real life, and that's how it works. It's as simple as that when you're connecting with people from your small business within your content or within how you show up in your community. And it's the same as a speaker connecting with people on stage. But we think, because of this age of digital media and AI and all of the things happening that has to be so fast, but real life connections and real personal relationships, they don't work like that. We're all human beings behind these devices. We're all human beings sitting in the audience, looking at someone on stage and saying, is this the inspiration I needed today or not? And so if something feels weird or misaligned to you when you are listening to a coach tell you how you should show up on stage, or when you're listening to a podcast tell you this is how you should do it and there's no other right way, or when you're listening to somebody tell you how to sell with cold leads inside the LinkedIn DMs, like we all get a million of those every single day, right? Like if it feels misaligned to you, it's probably because it's not aligned to who you are in real life and how you are showing up to connect with people and network with people in real life. And that's what I always tell people, like, let's find the way that feels sustainable, consistent, like really easy to manage, really easy to do, and it feels like who you are in real life. And when we find that consistency point, we can create endless content, we can create better stories for on stage, and we can create a bigger and much larger, much more engaged community.
That's I think an encouraging point for people, because it can feel a little bit maybe top down when we see somebody that's saying, here's how you need to do this, and it's like, okay, I guess I should, but it's not going to stick because it
Yeah.
doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't. You're not inspired by it.
Yes.
Where what you're describing is this bottom up thing. It's like the relationship develops because of a shared experience, or because there's a vibe there, or there's a problem
Yes.
we solved together. Maybe it's a team that we were a part of and we solved a problem and we enjoyed each other in the course of that and we built a relationship. That same experience can happen in our talk. We spend 60 minutes together. We can go on a journey together. We can solve a problem together, and that can increase the odds that our relationship is more connected.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I would also just add that use a cautious and um, skeptical eye when anyone tells you that there's only one right way to do something. There's never one right way. The right way is your way, the way that is going to make the most sense for you. And that is the way that you should trust. You should trust yourself.
The best way is the way that works, right? So
Yeah,
do some
exactly.
experimentation. What do you
Yes.
see as some maybe mistakes that people make that end up hurting their personal brand?
Yeah. So from like this is a podcast or a recording for speakers, right? So I'll lead with that. I think one of the first things that I see is speakers who are well-meaning want to lead with the business case or the facts or the statistics before leading with a story. And like I mentioned before, I think that leading with a story can really help you connect to your audience so when you connect to your audience, the statistics then matter. The statistics matter more when someone feels a connection to you. So lead with a story first. That can help illustrate your point. The more the story has to do with you, the better, because people will remember you for the reason that you're telling that story. The second thing I see is too many elements on slides, too many elements and too small of text. And I know that sounds so basic. Like everyone should know that. Everyone should like they're like, yeah, that's really okay. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks. This is a genius advice, right? But how many times do we still see 1,000 bullet points and 5-point text, and it happens to everyone. It happens to some of the best speakers I know. Some of the speakers that I work with that are getting paid, you know, a lot, double digit figures for their talks. I've still had to work with them on their slides and making sure that their slides have concise information and that are not too much for people to gather at once, because they're trying to hear what you're saying, they're trying to read, they're trying to gather the most important pieces to write down. It's too much, right? The last thing that I would say that I see people doing that I think could be better is I see them trying to create some kind of persona that they're not, because somebody told them they should be like that. Like, oh, someone said that you should use humor, right? That doesn't, like, someone said that you should be funny. Well, some people aren't funny. That's not their personality. And so when it comes out as a forced persona and something that's not aligned to your personality, it's hard to watch, right? It's hard to connect with because have you ever seen someone or met someone and you're like, something's not right here. Like, I just can't figure out why I'm not connecting with them. They seem nice enough. It's just like I have no desire to keep talking. It's usually because that person is struggling to be authentic in that situation and you can feel it. You can feel that energy coming off of them. So, same thing happens when you're on stage. If you are talking and you're trying to create this fake persona of who you are, that's why whenever I hear people saying, create your personal brand, I'm like, you're not creating a personal brand. You already are a personal brand. You already have a personal brand. We are going to enhance it. We're going to bring it out of you. We're going to tell people about it. We're going to tell your stories. But everyone has a personal brand already. That's already happening. So when somebody is creating this persona on stage of who they are, but it's not aligned to who they actually are, many times people can see right through that. So figure out who you are and pull out your strengths and use those when you're creating your talks, when you're creating your topics, and when you're building your content for your talk.
When you were talking about you don't create
Yeah.
the personal brand, I was envisioning Mr. Miyagi with the bonsai tree, right? You're just
Yeah.
bringing out the features, and over the course
Yeah.
of time, you're tending to it, and
Yes.
you're evolving it, and you're intentional, but you don't have, it's not clay that you can just shape.
Right. That's a great analogy. Yeah, absolutely. You are tending to it. And it's also something to be said that you don't eat the fruit the day you plant the seed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think a lot of people give up too soon. They are planting and planting and planting and planting, and they're saying, I don't feel any opportunities coming. I don't see any gigs coming, and I'm not sure what to do. But they're planting these amazing seeds that end up later becoming beautiful blossoming fruit. And I I hate to see people, instead of iterating, I hate to see them just saying like, yeah, this isn't for me anymore.
Tear the garden up, right?
Yep.
And start
Yeah.
over.
So that's a great analogy of the bonsai tree.
Now you have a podcast. Tell
I
us a little bit
do.
about the podcast, and if people want to learn more about your insights and learn more about Lauren V. Davis, give us some direction on that. So give us the need to know stuff.
Yeah, the Real Personal Branding podcast is kind of a VIP access to thought leaders, speakers, authors, coaches, and how they've built their own business, how they've really served their own personal brand, like how they've brought the stories out inside their own personal brands, and just the conversations that I have on this podcast are really meaningful to me because I found that when I was starting out as an entrepreneur, and this is now, I'm only 36, but I've been in business since I was 18, right? So I have a long career in owning my own business in comparison to other people my age. So what I found was when I was first starting, I felt like all I could see was success stories. And
Mm-hmm.
success stories are wonderful, and the highlight reels are wonderful, and they do give some inspiration of where you want to go. But I never heard the big entrepreneurs, like the big names and stuff, talking about the real stuff that was happening behind the scenes and what they were struggling with and what their weeks were like. And, divorces happen behind the scenes and kids get sick and money isn't there for a little while. And yet all we were seeing are all of these success stories. And so these conversations I've intended to have with people just really ask those questions that kind of dig deeper into the building of the business. And what I hear from the people who listen is that it brings them a lot of hope for their own business. It gives them a lot of inspiration. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but how I feel is that I love to hear how people did it rather than hear them give me advice on how to do it myself. I want to hear the stories of how people built things, what they did to build things, all of the chaos and triumphs and tribulations and happiness and celebrations that came in between. but also just how they did it, like how they went through all of that, what got them through it, instead of them being like, you should do this. And so that's what my podcast is about. Like, come hear the stories, come hear what people have really gone through in order to make it to where they are now and have a successful business that not only makes them money, but makes them happy.
I love that. That's the realness of the Real Personal Branding podcast. And I'm going to subscribe. I'm going to listen
I love
because
that.
it's so easy for us to hear other people's business stories and see them as an Instagram feed
Yes.
of these perfectly curated situations. And the
Yes.
reality is much messier, grittier, dirtier, with more scars and scuffs. And that's where the real lessons are. And so I appreciate you bringing those conversations to light. I appreciate you sharing some of the insights that anybody, whether you're a speaker, trainer, coach, entrepreneur, or an individual in a corporation, can be thinking about to build a better brand in how people perceive and think about what we can bring to the table for them. So, Lauren, any parting thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up our great conversation today?
Just that I really appreciate the time, and I would love for people to really connect with me. I'm honestly there. If you join my email list and you reply to any of my emails, I always reply back to you. If you find me on Instagram, I will absolutely have conversations with you, and it's all me. So I am the epitome of the real personal brand. Come hang out with me and let's be real friends.
Awesome. Lauren V. Davis, thank you so much for
Thank you.
being with me today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Take care.